I woke up to the kind of noise that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. Metal grinding, engines revving, the low, angry growl of heavy equipment chewing into dirt. I glanced at my phone on the nightstand, 6:06 a.m. On a Tuesday. Who in their right mind is doing construction at 6 in the morning unless they want to start a fight? I stepped to the window, and there it was. A bright orange mini excavator, right at the edge of my property, bucket teeth ripping a trench like it owned the place. Two guys in reflective vests were guiding a long run of white PVC pipe into the cut, and the cut was not on the street. Not on a shared easement. It was slicing straight through the shallow edge of the pond in my backyard. Not a decorative koi pond. Not a puddle. A real pond. On my land. The whole reason I bought the place. For a second, I honestly just stood there blinking, like if I stared long enough the scene would correct itself. Then I saw her. Audrey Kessler. My neighbor. Also president of the Cedar Ridge HOA. Standing there in spotless athleisure with a clipboard, watching the trench like she was supervising a military operation. Her posture said it all. Chin lifted, shoulders back, the tight little smile of someone who enjoys being obeyed. I threw on jeans and boots, didn't even bother with coffee. When I stepped outside, cold air hit my face and the smell of disturbed mud rolled up from the trench. Wet earth, diesel, that sharp mineral smell when you cut into ground that's been undisturbed for years. I walked right up to the property line and called out, "Morning, Audrey. Mind telling me why there's an excavator digging through my pond before sunrise?" She turned like she'd been waiting for that exact line. "Oh, hi, Nolan," she said, sweet as fake syrup. "Don't worry. This is an HOA infrastructure improvement. The board approved it." I laughed once, short and disbelieving. Approved what? Trespassing. Her smile didn't move. The community needs better drainage. Your pond is on the natural low point, so it's the optimal path. We're installing a discharge line. It's for everyone's benefit. I pointed at the trench. That line is going through my water. On my land. You didn't ask. You didn't notify. You didn't even knock on my door. Audrey's eyes narrowed just a hair. The pond is basically a neighborhood water feature. It's shared in function. Shared in function. I repeated, tasting the words like they were rotten. "Audrey, I pay taxes on this parcel. The fence line is right there. The deed is very clear." She sighed like I was the difficult one. "Nolan, you're still new here. There are implied rights for community utilities. It's in the covenants. You can't just block progress because you want to feel special about a little pond." A little pond. That hit a nerve I didn't even know I had. Here's the thing. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not the guy who loves arguing on Facebook about bylaws. I'm the guy who spent 15 years designing municipal water systems before I burned out and decided I wanted quiet. I wanted trees and water and distance from people who think a title gives them permission to step on you. And when I looked at that pipe, I didn't just see trespass. I saw a stupid mistake that was going to punish someone eventually. Because the line they were running wasn't heading toward the street storm drain like a normal runoff solution. They were tying into a junction near the far side of my pond. A junction I recognized instantly because I installed it. When I renovated the property 2 years ago, I had a small pump house by the shed. That pump moves gray water from a holding tank out to a permitted leach area on my lot. The pond overflow also ties into a pressure-rated outlet line. It's legal, it's inspected, and it works, but it has one big rule. Anything that taps into that shared pressure line needs a backflow preventer. A proper one, not a cheap check valve from a hardware store. If you skip that, pressure changes can push whatever's in the line backward into the secondary pipe. I took one look at their setup and my brain did the rest of the math. No visible backflow device. No air gap. No protective loop. Just a straight tie-in. I asked, calm as I could manage, "You pull permits for this?" Audrey actually waved her hand like I'd asked if she had a library card. HOA projects don't need permits. We have authority under the CCRs. I didn't argue. Not yet. I just took out my phone and started photographing everything. The excavator, the trench, the workers, the pipe, the exact tie-in point. Audrey stiffened. "What are you doing?" "Documenting," I said. "For my records." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. This is why the neighborhood struggles with cooperation. Because of people like you. People like me. Translation, people who don't bow." I watched the workers set the pipe and backfill part of the trench. Audrey stood there for another minute, like she wanted me to explode so she could label me unstable. When I didn't, she gave that little tight smile again and walked off. I stood by the pond listening to the excavator for a moment, then turned toward my pump house. The control panel has a simple gauge. The holding tank level was already creeping up. Not alarming, but on an average day, it hits its activation point by early morning when showers and laundry stack up. When that pump kicks on, pressure surges through that shared line for about 10 seconds. 10 seconds is all it takes. I went inside, made coffee, and sat at my kitchen table staring at the steam, feeling that hot, shaking mix of anger and something else. Not exactly excitement, but the calm of knowing someone just stepped onto a rake they didn't see. Still, I wasn't going to rely on physics alone. I pulled my closing folder from a cabinet, deed, plat map, survey, HOA docs. I spread everything out like a crime scene. Highlighter in one hand, pen in the other. The pond was fully on my parcel. Not close. Fully. The survey markers were clear. No recorded utility easement. No drainage easement. Nothing. I called the county records office. A woman with a tired voice confirmed it in under 5 minutes. No easements filed. No right-of-way granted. No HOA claim on any part of my lot. I asked if an HOA could invent an implied easement after the fact. She actually chuckled. Sir, if that was real, everyone would be running pipes through everyone else's yard. Good. I wasn't crazy. By mid-afternoon, I had an email from Audrey with the subject line, Formal Notice, Community Drainage Project. It read like she was scolding a child. She wrote that the HOA had reaffirmed community utility rights, that I was obstructing a neighborhood improvement, and that I would be fined $200 per day if I interfered. She cited some section numbers that looked official enough to scare someone who doesn't read carefully. The funniest part? She claimed the board held an emergency meeting that afternoon and passed a resolution backing her project. No one notified me. No agenda. No vote notice. Nothing. So I called a friend of mine, Kendra, a real estate attorney I'd met back when I was still doing engineering contracts. She's the kind of woman who doesn't raise her voice, but somehow everyone still listens. I explained the situation. She paused and said, Nolan, that's not just HOA nonsense. That's trespass. And if she's fabricating meetings, that's a governance violation. Send me everything. While I forwarded emails and photos, I kept thinking about that missing backflow device. I wasn't planning a prank. I wasn't touching anything. I didn't need to. If Audrey wanted to hook into a system she didn't understand, the system would behave exactly how it always had. That night, I checked the tank level again. It was close to the trigger point. I looked out at the dark pond, the moonlight reflecting off the still surface, and I felt something that surprised me. Not rage anymore. More like patience. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. 6:30. I poured coffee into a travel mug and stepped onto my back porch. Audrey's backyard was already busy. Folding chairs. A little table with pastries. A couple neighbors standing around like they were at a ribbon cutting. She was wearing a blazer, for God's sake, like she was about to announce a new hospital wing. I could hear her voice drifting across the yards, bright and performative. Thank you all for coming. This is what community looks like. Progress. Cooperation. I checked my phone. 7:19 a.m. Then I heard it. That low mechanical hum from my pump house. Not loud, but familiar. The holding tank hit its threshold. The pump kicked on. At first, nothing happened. Audrey was standing near an outdoor faucet with a garden hose connected to the intake of her shiny new pipe. She twisted the handle and water flowed into it. The crowd clapped. She smiled like she'd invented plumbing. Then the pressure surge hit the shared line. There was a gurgle, deep, wrong, like a throat clearing underwater. A second later, her pipe intake sputtered. Foam spit out, then stopped. People laughed nervously, like maybe it was just air in the line. And then, it happened. A violent blast erupted from the intake like a geyser. Dark brown liquid sprayed across her patio, splattering the folding chairs, the pastry table, the front of her blazer, and two unlucky neighbors standing too close. The smell followed immediately, sharp, foul, unmistakable. Not mud, not pond water. Something you do not want on your skin. The backyard went from celebration to chaos in one breath. People jumped back, gagging, yelling. Someone knocked over the table. A woman screamed like she'd seen a snake. Audrey stood frozen in the center of it, mouth open, eyes wide. her perfect little event turning into a nightmare. The pump cycle lasted maybe 10 seconds. But 10 seconds was plenty. When it stopped, her patio looked like a crime scene. Brown puddles, streaks, splatter marks, people wiping their arms, cursing, backing away like the ground itself was contagious. And then Audrey's head snapped toward me. I was on my porch, coffee in hand, not smiling, not filming, just watching. Because my security camera was already doing the filming for me. She marched to the property line with shaky steps, her voice cracked and thin. How did that happen? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just said, "What did you connect to, Audrey?" She blinked like she couldn't compute the question. I walked down, stopped a respectful distance away, and held up a printed diagram I'd pulled from my project folder. Your contractor's tied into my pressure junction. That junction shares a line with my gray water discharge pump. When it activates, pressure reverses in any unprotected secondary connection. Her face drained. That's not possible. They said it was fine. They didn't install backflow protection, I said. So yeah, it's possible. She swallowed hard and whispered, I have an open house next week. There it was. The real reason, slipping out in panic. I looked at her and felt something complicated. Not sympathy exactly. More like, this is what happens when you treat people like obstacles instead of humans. You need a licensed plumber, I said, and probably a cleanup crew. Also, you should talk to an attorney before you send any more threatening emails. She stared at me like she wanted to scream, but she didn't. She turned back toward the mess, and I could hear neighbors murmuring, phones already out, recording, texting, posting. Once something like that hits a neighborhood group chat, it lives forever. That afternoon, the HOA called an emergency meeting. This time, they actually notified people. Probably because they couldn't pretend nothing happened. I showed up with a folder, a laptop, and Kendra on speakerphone if I needed her. The room was packed, buzzing like a courtroom. Audrey stood at the front trying to look composed. She started with, "We experienced an unfortunate malfunction." I raised my hand and didn't wait. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a consequence. I plugged in my laptop and put up 3 things. My survey showing the pond on my property, photos of the excavator at dawn, and Audrey's email threatening fines. The room went quiet in that sharp way people get when they realize they've been lied to. Then I showed the county record confirmation. No easement, no right-of-way, no HOA authority to dig a trench through my land. Someone in the back said, "So she just decided." Audrey snapped. I was trying to help the community. Another neighbor cut in. By dumping your runoff into his pond without asking. Murmurs turned into angry chatter. I played the security footage. Not the gross parts on loop, just enough to prove what happened and when. The room reacted like a single body. Gasps, disgust, then anger. And then the part Audrey didn't expect. A board member stood up. Not Audrey's friend. A quiet guy named Martin who never spoke at meetings. He said, "She didn't tell us what she was doing. She asked for a vote on a vague drainage improvement and rushed it through. I didn't even see the location." That cracked the whole thing open. A vote happened fast after that. The resolution backing Audrey's project was rescinded. A motion to remove her as president was scheduled properly. And Audrey stood there shaking, realizing her little kingdom wasn't built on stone. It was built on people being too tired to fight. A week later, she lost the vote. Nearly unanimous. No cheering, no celebration. Just a quiet, heavy end. Now here's where it gets messy. Because you'd think that's where the story wraps up, right? Justice served, villain defeated, credits roll. But real life doesn't do neat endings. 2 days after she was removed, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper. No signature. Block letters. "You made an enemy of the wrong people." I took a photo, added it to the folder. And then, last weekend, I saw a county utility truck parked down the road. Guys in uniforms walking the ditch line, measuring, talking, pointing at maps. I asked one of them what was going on. He shrugged and said, "New drainage survey. Might be a project coming through here later this year. Maybe it's unrelated. Or maybe Audrey still has friends. Maybe someone decided my pond is a convenient solution whether I like it or not. Maybe the next fight isn't with an HOA president. Maybe it's with something bigger. So I'm asking you, what would you do if you were me? Would you lawyer up immediately and go scorched earth? Or would you try to work with the neighborhood and risk getting played again? And be honest. If you watched that sewage geyser happen in real life, would you feel bad for her? Or would you call it karma? Drop your take in the comments, where you land on right versus wrong, power versus boundaries, and whether people like Audrey are born that way or created by everyone who stays quiet. If you've ever dealt with an HOA, a bully neighbor, or someone who thought rules didn't apply to them, tell your story too. And if you want more real, messy, satisfying lessons like this one, hit subscribe and stick around, because the next time someone tries to claim what isn't theirs, it might not end as quietly.